Damage can still be seen along.
People are raising concerns about beach erosion.
Growing concerns in Florida's coastal communities about beach erosion.
Half the beach just slid on out into the ocean.
$1 billion issue, and if we want to enjoy our beaches for years to come, it's a battle against nature that we will continue to wage.
$1.5 billion has been spent preserving Florida's beaches since 1998. Each year, this money is quite literally washed out to sea. I mean, just the idea of beach renourishment is foolish. We spend millions of dollars each year for a temporary solution that is becoming less and less effective each year. This isn't a hard conclusion to come to. For anyone who lives near a beach on Florida's East Coast will know just how much worse of a problem this has become. Without approaching this problem in a new way, we'll continue to waste millions of dollars in a fruitless attempt to save our coastlines. When you look at it like this, it does seem like change may be in order.
Welcome back to EcoBrief. My name is Jacob Potts, and I've lived on the coast of Florida for 17 years. In those years, we've went from having a small beach renourishment every 3 to 5 years to once every year or two, which still hasn't proven enough. What changed? I'm no expert, but from my observation, there's 3 main causes. First is man-made inlets that disrupt the flow of sand down Florida. These inlets trap the sand on its migration south, depriving coastlines south of the inlet of new sand. The second is human development that is built too close to the ocean. Beaches typically have something we call dunes. These dunes are made from salt-tolerant plants and trees that trap sand and make natural barriers. Humans have been overconfident and have built over these dunes, meaning there's just a few feet of sand between them and the endless energy of the ocean. The third reason is increased wave energy. It's no secret that hurricanes are stronger and more frequent than ever before, and these are the main culprits of beach degradation. Hurricanes, even ones that are far from Florida, can send waves up to 20 feet onto our beaches, washing away miles of coastline, which isn't uncommon. So now the stakes have been made clear. Can artificial reefs save Florida? To judge this, we're going to go over a few main points. What are the benefits? What are the costs? Is it possible? And if executed, will it even help? The type of natural reef we're going to try and replicate is called a fringe reef. Fringe reefs typically sit a few feet below the surface, close to shore, and are relatively wide, which allows for large waves to break on the reef and dissipate their energy before they reach the shore. But before we build this reef, there's a few important pieces of knowledge to understand. For this example, we're going to look at a 10-foot wave. Since this wave's 10 feet tall, it has a trough that's 10 feet. This is the part below the surface, sort of like the roots of a tree. If you have a reef that's 4 feet below the surface, waves will be forced to have a trough of 4 feet or less, meaning they can only be 4 feet tall. Beware, this is extremely simple terms and there's other factors at play. The reef must be wide enough to allow enough time for the wave to break and dissipate its energy. Depending on the currents, wind, wave energy, and how jagged the reef is, this length can vary. So now that we know what we're looking at here, let's look at the cost and plausibility. For this video, we're going to look at one stretch of Florida's coastline from Cape Canaveral to Malabar, a span of roughly 30 miles. Further out we build the reef, the more material we have to use to raise it to the surface. In this case, we don't have much space to work with here because it drops off relatively fast. At a depth of 20 feet, we're roughly 0.5 miles offshore, which is considered close and slightly risky because we risk water fluctuations that could kill the reef. But if we go any further out, it'll drop to depths of 30 feet and beyond, which would add substantially more material. So now that we have the place, we need to figure out the width, height, and material. The best option would be to replicate a fringe reef since they're relatively close to shore and they're shallow, unlike barrier reefs, which are typically miles offshore. The width would ideally be as wide as we could possibly build it within a reasonable budget. Let's say 1,650 feet or half a kilometer. This would give us adequate time to dissipate a wave. The reef should be built at a depth of 55 feet to prevent anything larger from reaching the shore. So in total, the structure would need to be 15 feet tall. At the current dimensions, we would need well over 1 billion cubic feet of material, but thankfully our reef doesn't need to be 100% density, and this is where the innovation takes over. One option would be to simply use old concrete from demolition buildings. However, the majority of this is surprisingly recycled in Florida, and even with all the concrete in Florida, it would possibly take over a decade to collect enough. Plus, there would be the added labor of making sure it's reef-safe in transportation of the irregular shapes from around Florida. Option 2 would be to make custom concrete shapes, such as jacks, which are commonly used as wave breaks due to their interlocking abilities. In Blender, I simulated what it would look like if we used different irregular shapes to maximize volume with the least material, and jacks seem like the best option. If we were to use jacks that stand at 10 feet tall, we would need roughly 48 million jacks. To put this in perspective, on the low estimate, we need to place one every 10 minutes for 900 years. That's assuming people worked around the clock with no delays. Plus, that's only for a small segment of Florida's east coast, just 12% to be exact. If you were to make a reef for the whole east coast, it would take 7,500 years and 400 million individual jacks to complete. But on the bright side of all this, the price is still manageable. Bringing it back to just our 30-mile stretch, it would cost roughly $50 million for the concrete. That's not as much as you might think when looking at how much we already spend each year on our beaches. Sure, there's many other costs that would go into the reef, but if you were to spread these costs out over a long period of time, it would be manageable. There are other options though, like creating rows of jacks. Although it would decrease the strength of the reef and may cause it to fall apart, it would also decrease the amount of jacks needed by a substantial amount, and the rows could still be adequate for a continuous break. Option 2 would be to scale it down a bit, maybe only make it half as wide. I'm not sure how much this would affect the dissipation of waves, but it would be under the natural size of a fringe reef. To me, this is the more plausible option. For example, a sandbar is a good natural test. They're relatively narrow and still dissipate wave energy despite being so. Even at half the size, it would be much bigger than a sandbar, and the jagged bottom would dissipate a wave far better than a sandbar does. Just for fun, let's build a reef half the size of the original. It would only take around 22 million jacks and cost $24 million for the concrete. There's still so many ways you could engineer this reef to construct faster and have a more efficient wave dissipation. Although there's still some unknowns like how the natural flow of sand would be affected, how wide the reef would really need to be, and where it would become just too cold to sustain a reef, the benefits of an artificial reef would be monumental. Not only would the reef protect Florida's coast from waves, likely saving billions in the future, it would also bring in more tourism and help replenish fish supplies. Aside from economic benefits, the environmental benefits would be nothing short of a miracle. With coral reefs being threatened with extinction, the construction of such a large reef would save hundreds of species of coral and animals that reside in the reefs. If you know a content creator who may know more about this stuff, let them know. Maybe they have some better ideas. But for now, that's it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.